Hey guys, it's Mason, and this is Wrestling in the Dark, the only professional wrestling podcast brought to you by a blind wrestling fan. AEW's Double or Nothing was just last week, and having dipped my toe into the indie scene at the time, I've decided to try and take a little bit more of a look at that side of things. I'm only really a WWE fan, I've only really ever watched that type of wrestling, but with AEW becoming a thing, I think it's time to start taking a look outside. So, after a rubbish night's sleep and waking up early, I decided, why not check out Impact Wrestling's latest episode from the 31st of May 2019. By the time I started watching wrestling, around WrestleMania 28, LOL TNA was already a meme. It had already sort of gained a reputation and was already going through some of the hardships that led to all the changes that we've seen, but Impact in its current form has had quite a lot of positive reviews, quite a lot of positive buzz about it, and I decided to take a look at this week's episode. So if you want to know what happened and how good it was and how it was for a blind wrestling fan, stick around as I take a look at Impact Wrestling. So you'll have to forgive me for a true lack of knowledge when it comes to Impact. I'm really going to try my best to get all of this right, but if I make a few mistakes, I just apologise in advance, because it's just a brand new thing, sort of the same sort of deal as with AEW last week. But I really enjoyed this show for the most part. I did have a few little issues with it, but I thought it was pretty fun. It went fairly fast, and I was surprised that I enjoyed it, because like I said, I had a really bad night's sleep. I woke up and I was in a pretty bad mood, so I thought, why not go watch some wrestling, try and put myself in a better mood, and lo and behold, this show did actually pull through with putting me in a bit of a better mood. It kicked off with in-ring action straight away, which some would say is more than Monday Night Raw did this week. It was fast-paced, crazy, chaotic action in this first match, because it was Moose, someone who I have heard of, teaming up with the North, Ethan Page and Josh Alexander, versus the ECW Originals, Dreamer, Sabu, and Rob Van Dam. Now, I thought that the commentary, which I believe is Josh Matthews and Don Callis, but if I got that wrong, feel free to correct me. They started off really, really well, and I thought that they were being quite detailed with the calling. They were on point. I never felt confused in the early moments of the match, that is, at least. Because later on in the match, I felt that they got a little bit lazier, and this is something that I found through the show seemed to be a fairly consistent thing. It was almost like maybe they got a little bit bored towards the end of the match, or maybe even the opposite, maybe they were just getting too into it, because in the early moments of the match we got some cool spots. We got a springboard DDT by Sabu. Now, someone that's never seen a Sabu match in his life, this was really surprising to me. I was like, how old is this dude? Like, he's got to be getting on a bit, and to be pulling off springboard DDTs is pretty impressive, so props to him. And Moose was doing dueling chants with RVD, and that was pretty entertaining. He pushed the ref in the way. Rob Van Dam sort of pushed the ref back out of the way, and then Moose low blowed him. Like I said, all of this, I really thought that they were doing a spot-on job, and I really never felt confused. I even felt like I knew which man was legal, and that's something that I definitely struggle with tag matches, especially 6-man. So I was really, really impressed with that. However, like I said, towards the end of the match, it got a little bit lazier. So we got a part where I don't really know what happened. But the commentary were like, "Oh, that backfired. Oh, what a showing!" And then an ECW chant, and then a little bit later on we got, I think that Sabu might have gone over the top rope, something like that, and it was just, we're getting vintage Sabu here in Philly, and like I said, it's one of those things. at this sort of point of the match, seems like it's a fairly important spot. It feels like it's a bit of a high spot in the match. You'd think that they would want to fully let you know what they're doing rather than just reacting. Then you're not fans, you're commentators. Do your job. I'd say the exact same thing if it was Michael Cole. I did feel that the commentary on this, as much as people might disagree with me, was a lot more akin to a main roster type commentary than an NXT or an NXT UK type commentary. I really did feel, and these weren't the only examples of that sort of reactionary thing, so I think that's why it sort of rubbed me the wrong way eventually. The closing moments of the match, we got a Spicoli driver, a spear, and another move that's just really, really escaping me right now. And then Sabu hit an Arabian facebuster with the chair. I don't know whether it's always with the chair or whether it's just a top rope move, but he hit it with the chair this time, and that got the fall on Ethan Page. I gave this a 4 out of 6. It's sort of a low 4 or 6, but there was some really nice spots. Like I said, other than the few lazy calls, I did feel like they did a fairly good job of keeping me apprised of what was going on, what man was in and was legal and wasn't. And yeah, I thought the in-ring action itself was good. It was a nice start to the show. Really set that tone for what they were going for with the ECW vibe, with them being in Philly. Was a good way to draw me in and get me excited for the rest of the show. So 4 out of 6 is what I gave this. And post-match, Moose sort of blamed the North and cut a bit of a promo, showed some nice intensity, really well delivered. A great start to the show, in my opinion. That's a little bit hyperbolic. It's not a great start, but it's a seriously solid, very strong start to the show. So after that opening match, we got a short but pretty sweet promo by the Impact Wrestling champion, Brian Cage, a man whose name I have actually heard floating around. I heard about his back injury a few weeks back, or however long ago it was. But I thought this promo was really, really well delivered. He spoke about not being cleared to wrestle, but being incredibly sick of Michael Elgin bragging and sending his friends to the hospital. So come Slammiversary, whether he's cleared or not, he'll defend that Impact Championship against Michael Elgin. Now, I really, really liked the content of the promo. I thought Brian Cage delivered it really well, with real conviction, and it really drew me in and made me feel like there is a history to this feud, like Elgin has actually been a thorn in his side that he's frustrated with, and whether or not he's cleared, he's going to fight that dude because he's just so pissed off at him, and I like that. The thing that I didn't like about it, now we got a Michael Elgin response a little bit later on that I'll get to once we get there, but they sort of acted throughout the episode like that Slammiversary match is just made now, and I feel like that sort of robs the tension of it. If they're going to do the story that he's going to wrestle that match and defend that championship whether he's cleared or not, surely there should be some sort of tension as to whether he's going to be able to, in terms of, is his body going to carry him to it? Him and Elgin might want that match to be happening, but are Impact management going to make it happen? Will they let him wrestle not cleared? What measurements are they going to take to stop him from doing that? I just thought that would have been a little bit more of an interesting way to go, rather than just being like, oh, that's happening now. But they might do that in the coming weeks. One of the things that I thought this show did really well was referencing the history and the continuity of what's been going on recently. So when there was a story beat coming up, or they were continuing a story, I felt like I always knew what was going on there. So I just really liked that. I had that one little irk about it, but other than that, I thought it was a really, really strong promo. Really drew me in, made me want to see more from Brian Cage, made me connect with him, so that it made me, connect with Michael Elgin too, but in the heel sort of way of like, yeah, you seem like a dick. I want to see you get your head kicked in by Brian Cage. And it almost feels like it could be worth watching Slammiversary just for that. If there's some good stuff between now and then that catches my eye. I thought it was a really, really effective promo. The next part of the show was probably my favourite part of this episode. It was Tessa Blanchard versus Glenn Gilberti in what Josh Matthews described as rare intergender matchup. I hope that it's not that rare, because this could be one of the things that really draws me in with Impact. I really like the concept of intergender wrestling. I have never had a problem with it. I genuinely have never had a problem with thinking that a woman could beat up on a man. I know that there are many, many women out there that could kick my ass, and frankly, it just opens up so many more matches, so many more feuds, and I've just always wanted to see it a bit more. So if this is a regular thing that could happen, then this really might draw me in with Impact Wrestling. This segment was so effective. I really thought it was brilliant. Gilberti comes down to the ring, and as he's coming down, the commentators do an incredibly spot-on job letting you know what's going on, why this is happening. So they say that Tessa Blanchard is really angry because she's feeling embarrassed. No one's ever embarrassed her until Glenn Gilberti interrupted a knockouts battle royal, inserted himself into the match, and ended up winning. So Gilberti is really anti-women's wrestling, which is something that seemed to go on throughout the rest of the show with different performers, but was done best, in my opinion, with this. Gilberti's promo was so effective with just, you were like, okay, when you shut up, you are getting your teeth kicked in. Like, Tessa Blanchard is going to mess you up. He comes out and he says, I'm going to prove to everyone that I'm not as much of a bad guy as everyone thinks. I'm going to give Tessa Blanchard some credit. She's one of the best women's wrestlers there are, but that's sort of like being the star player on the Philly Flyers. Now, don't know much about the Philly Flyers, don't need to. It's a your local sports team suck joke, so that's good, and it's also just self-evident what he means. It's just, you are the best of a bad lot. Really effective. I was like, ooh. He starts talking about the women's revolution, how women are acting like it's their road to glory, but it's a road paved with potholes and eventually it'll fall off a cliff. What about those women drivers, eh? And I was just, as he was going on, I was finding it hilarious, but I was also like, God damn, I can't believe you're actually saying this. And after that, he says that Tessa's always had daddy issues, but tonight he'd be her daddy. Now, that was probably the one part that I just thought they could have maybe missed out. A little bit gross, but that's what they were going for, so who cares? Like I said, it was a really effective way of making you want to see Tessa Blanchard just rip him apart, and that's what she did. The bell went, she just unloaded on him. The commentators were really, really doing a good job of making it feel like a dramatic moment, really putting over how intense Tessa was being. And after a little bit of just a beating, she quickly disposed of Glenn Gilberti. And this, like I said, was probably my favourite thing of the night. I gave it a 5 out of 6. Just so effective for wanting me to see more of Tessa Blanchard, more of what Glenn Gilberti is going to do, and just see more of this intergender stuff. So like I say, so far throughout the show, they've done a fairly good job of drawing me in, making me want to see what's going to happen, and referencing all the stuff that's happened before, so I'm not lost in the storyline. So I was really, really impressed so far, and definitely made me want to see more of Tessa Blanchard, because I've heard good things about her from Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful, who I really, really respect, and really, I always listen to his podcasts, and I put a lot of stock in what he says. So if he says to watch out for Tessa, then I'm definitely going to watch out for her. Didn't need to see this at all. Effective storytelling. Thoroughly enjoyed it. From the high point to possibly the low point of the show, this was the only part that really left me feeling like, what? So there's like LAX are hanging out, presumably having a bit of a drink, bit of a party. I presume that that's their gimmick. They're a little bit wild, and some other tag team comes over. I think that they mentioned later on that it was the Rascals because they made a match about it. But it was really, really hard to keep my focus with this because I'm listening through headphones and it's just like, and they're all just talking over each other, and I just couldn't get into it. So I was just like, can we please move on, get to another match now? It's a really small complaint, especially right after what was a really solid segment before, but like I said, this was just one of the small negative things about the show. They were all just proper talking over each other. You couldn't listen to one of them because they were all trying to overpower the others, and it was just really confusing as to what was going on. Maybe might have been able to keep up with it a little bit more had I been more familiar with the talent, but you know, for a first time viewer, just didn't capture my attention with this and sort of turned me off for a little minute. Another promo, but this time to build up the main event. This was from Rich Swann and his tag team partner Willie Mack. Swann showed some real intensity in this promo that showed that he has completely reimagined his character since WWE. It could have been a completely different person had I not known that it was Rich Swann, because he said that Michael Elgin had powerbombed Willie Mack into or off a truck, and he'd powerbombed Rich Swann from pillar to post, that Johnny Impact kept conveniently finding himself involved in these little situations, but they stood no chance against Mack and Swann because they have caught, I think he said, charisma, athleticism, and raw talent. A really nice, short and sweet promo. Like I said, both men had a little bit of something to say. I think Willie Mack said something about proving that tonight they've got that fire, and like I said, they both showed some real nice intensity, and it was really cool to see Rich Swann doing something completely different from last time I saw him, and I never really thought that I'd see Rich Swann again, because I really didn't know that I was going to come and watch Impact. So it was really cool to see someone having completely reinvented themselves, and definitely got me drawn in for the main event. I was like, okay, I can get behind this Rich Swann. So another effective segment, really. Another tag team matchup next with the Desi Hit Squad taking on the Deaners, Cousin Jake and Corey Deaner. Forgive me for not being particularly familiar with the names. I've only heard them a few times, like literally in this episode. Not particularly the most interesting match, to be honest. I didn't end up making a whole lot of notes. I didn't think that the commentary was keeping up with it that well. I feel like they did a lot of exposition about other things and mainly just sort of made jokes about how inbred Corey and Cousin Jake were. At one point, Cousin Jake did a top rope dive, I think. Callis had a really nice call, like 6'6", 300 pounds over the top rope. Again, would have been nice to know what sort of dive. You know, there's so many different things you can do jumping over the top rope. I would have liked to have known what, but it's just that's a nitpick. At the end of the day, he did an over the top rope move, and he's a big guy. That's the point of the spot, so that's fair enough. They were really putting over the differences between these two tag teams, saying that the Desi Hit Squad was more of the high tech higher class type wrestler with all the high-tech performance equipment, training, etc., whereas in the Dinas are just happy with a tractor and a pulley. Drawing those differences basically between one lifestyle and the other, that helped form the differences between them, helped give a little bit more of an image of what they would maybe dress like or look like. Obviously I would be completely wrong, because I always am when I try and picture someone. For example, I didn't learn until just a couple of weeks ago that Ricochet was bald, so that's just one of those things. You just form a mental image of someone, and it's always wrong, but at least they give me something. One of the Desi brothers was in the corner, got hit by a big spear by Cousin Jake, and they were really putting over the welts in the back of the guy. I'm sorry that I just couldn't get their names. They said it so fast, and then they didn't really say it much throughout the match. I didn't really feel like they did too good of a job here of keeping me informed of who was legal, but I feel like it was mostly a Cousin Jake thing, because that was what my notes were. The end of the match saw Cousin Jake score a roll-up, and like I said, it didn't really draw me in that much. I didn't feel like it was that great. I gave it a 3 out of 6. Probably, rather than being a negative, this was probably just the only non-factor in the show that I feel like you could have just taken it out and you wouldn't really have lost anything, but they just obviously needed something to fill time. And yeah, so it could have been a little bit better, but it wasn't bad either, and I gave it a 3 out of 6. 2 more promos next. One from Killer Cross, a man who I have heard of but have never seen anything of him. This promo was actually really decent. It was aimed at Eddie Edwards. Now I can't really remember the content of it because it was very wordy. They really seemed to be playing up how much of a psychopath he is. And he seems to be pretty intelligent, pretty articulate. Really drew me in, made me feel like he was a dangerous guy, an ominous guy. I wouldn't want to face him. Felt sort of sorry for whoever he was up against, and I just felt like it was really effective. I can't, like I said, I can't recall the content of the promo now, but I definitely enjoyed it at the time. Then we got a Michael Elgin promo, who was addressing Brian Cage. He said that Impact should just hand him the championship, but he's okay with beating Brian Cage for it. He said that he won't be calling an ambulance, he'll be calling a hearse. Now let's just address this hospital thing. This really seemed like something that Impact wants to push, or they just really like using. I felt like in every match, Callis at least was like, oh, this guy wants to send this guy to the hospital. He's not just looking to hurt him, he's going to send him to the hospital. And it was just throughout the episode, it slowly got more and more ridiculous. I was like, okay, we get it. These matches are hard hitting and the competitors are like crazy. They're gonna send each other to the hospital, okay? Johnny Impact made a little appearance in the promo. He said he had the opportunity to turn the Slammiversary match into a title match, and he said that he hoped him and Michael Elgin could coexist, and Elgin said they'd be just fine if Impact could focus. Really effective in terms of you've already had the Rich Swann Willie Mack promo, which shows that they are more of a united team. You can tell they're friends, you can tell that they're out for a bit of blood because of the trouble that they've been caused by these two. And then this promo does a really good job of showing you that these are the opposite. They're not in tandem, they are not a full team, they're not friends, and just sets up that nice will they be able to coexist sort of like vibe. And just adds a story to the match before the match has even begun. So I really can't complain about any of that. I thought Elgin, again, showed some nice intensity, really strong promo, never really seen anything from him before, and obviously Johnny Impact came across as charismatic as I've always heard. So it was a really nice promo. A lot of the show, as I'm going through it, was really, really positive, really. Another pretty decent match up next. It was Killer Kross taking on Eddie Edwards in a street fight. Again, focusing on that sort of ECW chaotic brawling style. Really, really like this match, and because of the nature of not being too technical, there was actually plenty of calling of the action here, and I really enjoyed that. And Josh Matthews actually did a really good job of building the story in this match, which I enjoyed too. Eddie Edwards went straight for Killer Kross at the beginning of this match, and Josh Matthews goes, he's trying to tell the story of what's been going on, and as Eddie Edwards goes for Killer Kross, Josh Matthews just goes, "So much for storytelling." And I just thought, I was like, okay, that's a really, it just cracked me up. Later on in the match, he mentioned that Killer Kross had something in his pocket which came into play later on in the match, which I really enjoyed. Nice foreshadowing, really getting you to expect it and sort of wonder what it's going to be. Obviously, lead-lined gloves might be something that Killer Kross has used before, but I was not aware if he has or not. So it was like, oh, what's he gonna have? What's he gonna use? And that added a nice element of anticipation to the match. There was some really good calling of the spots, and there was only really two places where I thought that they let me down. There was a spot where it was just sort of like, Killer Kross, oh my god, Edwards is down and out. And I was like, okay, that's not enough information. And then just a little bit more of a nitpicky one was Eddie Edwards going for a Tiger Bomb a little bit later on in the match when the ring was full of chairs. He went for the Tiger Bomb and Killer Kross countered, and all they really said was that he dropped Edwards on his head. And I was like, okay, well, there's any number of things that you can do with that. It could have been a pile driver, it could have been a face buster, it could have been a brain buster. It could have been any of those. It could have been any of those sort of things. So I was just like, that's a little bit more of a nitpicky one more than anything. There was a spot where Killer Kross sent Eddie Edwards through a ladder, and they were really reacting to that. I think he got Edwards in the eye just before he did it, so they were like, oh, Killer Kross, he's got the eye, and then you get the big sound of the ladder going, and a really, really intense match that I was enjoying the spots for, really wanting Eddie Edwards to try and turn it around. There was a nice spot where he hit the Blue Thunder Bomb on a garbage can. He hit the Blue Thunder Bomb on Killer Kross onto a garbage can, and Don Callis asked, why did he not go for the cover? And I was like, duh, obviously, because he watches WWE and he knows that you don't win matches with a Blue Thunder Bomb. And then he started wailing on Killer Kross with the garbage can. It took like 3 shots to get him down. Really liked that, just really playing up on that really strong, unstoppable intensity of Killer Kross, that calculating, psychopathic nature that he's got, that they were really putting over. Matthews had a really nice call at the beginning of the match where he was talking about Edwards wearing Converse and bringing up problems that he's been having with his shin and his ankle, and asking whether it's clever for him to be wearing Converse, pointing out that wrestling boots would be tighter and give more support to the ankle. So I really liked that. And then it was really funny because they made that call, and then they were like, no, not that it matters because Killer Kross is going for his face anyway. And then another high point of the match was Edwards hitting a sunset flip onto the chair pile. Thought that was really, really nice. Like I said, never really felt lost in this match, and that's really cool considering that it was this type of match. they could easily have just gone into just reaction mode with this. They didn't need to really call what was going on, but they did, and I really enjoyed it. I thought they really added to the match with the drama of putting over both men, and how crazy both of them are, and referencing both of their histories, saying about Edwards being in the American Wolves. Really good job in this match, and they really didn't get lazy other than those two things that I could think of. Towards the end of the match, like I said, Killer Cross pulled out the lead-lined gloves from his pocket, which was paying off from the foreshadowing from earlier, which I thought was awesome. He was going to lay into Eddie Edwards, and Sandman came down, which distracted Killer Cross, and Edwards got the win with the Boston Knee Party. And I just thought it was really cool. After that, Callis was like, "Oh, Sandman looks like he's like 25 drinks in," and that was pretty funny too. Just imagining how drunk Sandman must look. And he gave Edwards a brand new kendo stick. Like I said, I thought that I got everything important in this match, and not just with spots, with the story that was being told, for the reasonings that they were doing it, and all just the little factors that went into it. I thought it was a really good match, and I gave it a 5 out of 6. This probably, other than the Tessa Blanchard thing from earlier, this would be the thing that I said go and watch from this show. The Tessa Blanchard thing is a completely different beast, though. This was just a really nice, solid, crazy wrestling match that I thoroughly enjoyed. Now, this next part I really wasn't expecting, and I probably should have been, knowing that the Impact is the place that spawned the Broken Universe, and obviously there is some stuff here that I just don't know what's going on. This segment was a 6 out of 6 for weirdness, but also pretty entertaining. So it was Rosemary and someone she was calling James. I don't know who that is, but she was talking about wanting her friend back, Ali, I think they said, and whoever James is was talking about, did a nice recapping of the story, like, let's talk about our history here, and he talks about going with Ali into the undead realm. Into the undead realm. I can't believe I'm talking about this on a wrestling show. He talks about going into the undead realm and fighting their way out of there, and the fact that Ali was different once she came out. Rosemary didn't like that, and everything would have just been fine, but she had to go into the undead realm again. He's like, if you're such a good friend of Ali's, why is your friend so dead? And Rosemary points out that she's got one of his friends and says that maybe she'll return her in the same condition, and then she starts screaming at him that that her friend is dead because of him. And I just thought it was really entertaining. It was it was stupid. I don't think anyone can argue that this was bloody stupid, but wrestling should be stupid sometimes, and when it's delivered well like this, and don't get me wrong, when I say it was delivered well, by no means was it like well acted or whatever. I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I'm going to reevaluate that statement, because what constitutes as good acting? Because they were both perfectly playing their parts, even though it was like terrible at the same time. So I really enjoyed this, and just give it a 6 out of 6 for being completely weird, but also making me want to know what's going on, and I want to go and find out what's going on. I'll be asking the GIR Discord people that later on. I'm sure I'll hear about that from them. Like I said, as you can tell, I was thoroughly entertained by this segment. So it was just yet another positive segment for this show. Really thought that this show was quite impressive. Being tired this morning, when I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, it's sort of average. It wasn't anything too special. And whilst it wasn't groundbreaking, it really was solidly entertaining, and I'm realising that as I'm going through this recap. What a weird segment. And now it's time for the main event of the evening. It was Rich Swann and Willie Mack taking on Johnny Impact and Michael Elgin. This match I had a little bit more mixed feelings on than any. Definitely didn't feel like it deserved that main event spot, even though it had Slammiversary implications. Definitely think that that the Killer Cross Eddie Edwards match would have worked far better as a finale to the show, as a main event. But it was a fairly decent match. It had a fairly solid and understandable story. Again, it was just that teamwork versus non-teamwork sort of thing. But they actually sort of flipped it on the head, because at one point Rich Swann, who I just absolutely for some reason kept writing down Roderick Strong in my in my notes, God knows why. Anyway, Rich Swann was... The opportunity to tag Willie Mack was there, but he didn't take it. Impact tried to make him pay for that decision, but Rich Swann managed to evade, so showing that even though he didn't do the teamwork thing, he didn't tag his partner in, it was maybe the right decision. We got a few nice spots in this, in terms of Willie Mack hitting a frog splash. We got a Death Valley driver from Michael Elgin. The commentators were putting over how surprisingly well Impact and Elgin were working as a team, which I actually quite liked, considering the story was that they were supposed to not be working well, which was a nice sort of half swerve to throw you off the scent of what was going to happen towards the end of the match. There just was a little bit of lazy calling in this match. I don't know whether it's because the commentators find it boring or whether they're too into it, but it was just one of those things where at the start of the match it started off being really nice in-depth commentary and I didn't feel lost, and then towards the end of the match there was just a few things that I was like, oh, come on. There was a bit where Elgin went over the top rope and they were like, shades of Brian Cage, and I was like, again, it's just one of those small nitpicky things, but it was like, will you please tell me what sort of rope dive it was, because that'll sort of help build my image of Michael Elgin, what sort of athletic things he can do. It's just, I just want to know what's going on, basically. On that dive, he wipes out Impact. Impact's like, do you mind? We're supposed to be partners. And I thought that was really funny. Just, I was glad that he shouted it so loud, because it really tickled me. And then some more of the lazy calling a little bit later on, when Swann and Willie Mack went for a cover, and then Michael Elgin came and broke it up, and I was like, okay, just going for a cover? Is that all you... Oh, they're going for the cover! And it's just... Again, it really robs the drama of the moment when you don't know exactly what they're doing. We got a booyah spot at some point, and they would just they just called it going back and forth. And I just wanted to know what sort of strikes were happening. Tell me, is it forearms? Is it elbows, kicks, open palm strikes? Just tell me what they're going backwards and forwards with, and it'll help build my mental image of the match. Again, another one was a little bit later on. Josh Matthews was like, oh, Willie Mack coming in? Sorry, no, Rich Swann. Oh, he near enough took his head off. And it was just like, okay, you're really taking me out of it now, because as it's just getting worse and worse towards the end, you're like, oh, like, come on, the drama of the match is building, and I can't get into it because you're not keeping me up to date with what the action is. You are, because I know what's happening with the spot. Again, with Michael Elgin going over the top rope, I know he's going over the top rope, I know it's a dive, and for the most part I can imagine that, but it just helped build that little bit extra to know what type. Same with the booyah spot, and same with taking his head off. Towards the end of the match, Elgin accidentally hit Impact again. No, sorry, I'm getting that wrong. It was Impact accidentally hitting Elgin. Elgin just decided to take a walk. He was going up the ramp. Rich Swann hit a cutter and then a 450 splash, and they picked up the win. Yeah, it was like a sort of low 4 out of 6 for me. It only just got up into that 4 because even though I felt like the intensity of the match and enjoyed the story that was being told and the actual spots that happened, I just didn't feel like it was detailed enough to draw me in. So I think if I could have seen this, probably would have been more of a solid or strong 4, but just for my experience of what they did here, I just thought that it let the match down a little bit, and that's why I didn't feel like it really worked as the main event. I feel like if it had been Killer Kross and Eddie Edwards in the main event, I'd have come away feeling like, I have to watch next week, I really want to know what's going on. Whereas I was just a little bit, not fully put off, but not as enthused coming out of it, because I was like, okay, if that's what they're like on TV, are they going to drop the ball on pay-per-views, etc.? Is that going to be the worst that they are? Because I can put up with that, because even though I said it was more of a main roster style, it still wasn't quite as vague as main roster can get sometimes. Main roster WWE, I should say. It wasn't quite as vague as that could get sometimes, but I was just like, okay, is that the worst they're going to be? Because I can put up with it if it is, but if they're going to get worse than that, that's a problem. So yeah, it's annoying having to end on a little bit more of a sour note, because I enjoyed the rest of the show quite a bit, and I just felt like they let it down with this match. But the one thing that I take away from it is Rich Swann and Willie Mack seem like a really cool team that I'd like to see more of. Their characters really, really drew me in, and I'd like to see more of what they've got to do. And yeah, like I said, looking forward to that. So all in all then, for someone that is usually a loyal WWE fan and has only recently started trying to dip his toe into the indie scene, this was a really interesting and positive episode that made me thirsty for a little bit more. I'm definitely going to try and keep up to date with what the story is in Impact. Most of the people on this card really drew me in, showed me some character, showed me a reason why I should care about what they're doing, and made me want to see more of them. Tessa Blanchard, Glenn Gilberti, both men in the Killer Kross match, Rich Swann, it's just all of them. As I'm going through it, it's like, no, I'd like to see more of all of these people and see more of the stories and get to know it a bit more. It was a really enticing episode, and as a blind wrestling fan, it was still a really positive episode. There was a few places where they dropped the ball, and there was a few places where I felt let down and it took me out of the match. But for the most part, there were some really nice calls. Josh Matthews did really well at adding to the story, bringing up story elements, keeping me up to date with what the history and the tension and the reasons why everyone has problems with each other. I thought they did a really, really good job, other than those few little nitpicks that I had, and I do think for the most part they are nitpicks. I'd love to hear from Impact fans. Was this a good episode? Was this an average episode? Just let me know in the comments below, because I am completely unfamiliar with this, and I'd love to know what your favourite thing about Impact is right now, and what your favourite story is, and just let me know a little bit more about Impact. Thanks so much for sticking around to the end of the video. This was a completely new experience for me, and I hope you enjoyed hearing me talk about it. If you'd like to hear me talk about more wrestling, you can hit that subscribe button and the notify bell if you like, and that way you'll always be kept up to date with WITD. Right guys, I'm off, and you should have a good one.